good evening, my friends. How are you? Welcome to another edition of Wednesday Night Live with me, Mike Avery, here in my studio at the house. Glad to have you along with us on a Valentine's Day on Ash Wednesday. Oh, it didn't go. There we go. Maybe finally. Trying to get to go live on Instagram tonight. Of course, Instagram is fighting me, as it always does. Kind of a pain, really. Let me see if it's working. Yeah, I think it is. Okay. Hey, Gus, how you doing, buddy? So it appears I do have Instagram working tonight. Anyway, happy Valentine's Day to you. Happy Ash Wednesday to you. My name is Mike Avery, and this is Wednesday Night Live here on actually all of my social media outlets, including Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, now called X. Hey, Cliff, good evening. How are you? Craig, always a pleasure. Tommy, Tim, Bernie, Rex, Randy, Dave, Lane, Uncle Johnny, how you doing, buddy? Let's jump over to Instagram. Gus, all used up. Carlton Zarelli, Reynolds 1530. See, you can see, okay, on Instagram, I think you can see the comments that I'm pulling up from StreamYard. Maybe eventually we can get things to work over there. Bruce, say good evening, Steve. How are you? Dan, thank you. Chuck, Linda, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining me on this edition of Wednesday Night Live. Again, my name is Mike Avery. And glad to be along with you as we celebrate Michigan Gun Rust. Don't recognize you guys. Thank you. Appreciate you joining me on this edition of Wednesday Night Live as we now add Instagram as well. Bobby Sullivan. Captain Bobby, how you doing, buddy? Bobby Sullivan of Icebreaker Charters. Bobby is the guy whose client caught a state record king salmon 3 summers ago. Now, Bobby, are you on the river right now? Are you chasing steelhead or are you chasing walleye? I got a feeling you'd be doing very well on both. Patrick, good evening. Bruce, Art Lewis. Well, thank you, Art. I appreciate that. It was nice to see you, and I had to come home. And take a nap. Chuck, I didn't see you sneak in there from Alabama. Where are you? Appreciate you joining us tonight in Alabama. I saw Art Lewis last night at the Fordney Club fundraiser. 50 guns. Wow. Jerry checking in from the Adirondacks. Tony, how goes the crow hunting? Son had a nice fish. That was not our beloved Skinny Water, but I know somebody else who was in there and got a few fish today. Good evening. Bobby says been doing well in Saginaw. Fishing has been phenomenal. Tuckfield over on Instagram. Glad to have you along with us. Yeah, I bet the fishing has been good. A lot of boats on the river too. Hey, Bobby. I talked to Jason Graham today on the radio show. He's been concentrating primarily on the bay. As much as I love to troll, if I had a choice right now, I'd be jigging the river. Mark, that picture you sent me is hilarious. I didn't know you were doing that. And I looked at that picture just before I went on the air, and I busted up laughing, and I had a hard time getting the laughing under control before I went on the air. Ed Bolanowski, Matt Smith Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram. Always a pleasure, Smitty, to have you along with us. Paul, thank you. I got a light popping in and out on me, too. Okay, so what's on the agenda for tonight? Let's see what Tim has to say. Saw about 200 deer between West Branch and Gladwin. It is. And it's funny that you should mention that because that's one of my topics, Tim, that you don't see one deer right now. You see a bunch of them. Art says, what did Glenn Duncan have to say about the new gun laws? I'll get to that in just a second. Kind of a weather roller coaster, right? It was so warm last week, turned cold now. Supposed to get some snow tonight and tomorrow morning. Hey, Ross, good evening, buddy. How are you feeling? I was going to text you today and ask you that problem that you and I were talking about last week. How's that treating you? Linda says, good fishing in the Skinny Water this time of year. I don't know, Linda. I haven't been out, but I see no reason why my beloved skinny water wouldn't be good right now because, as you say, the fish are getting close to the flickering light. Okay, beeping smoke alarm maddening. Hello, Mike. Where'd it go? What happened? There we go. I took a video with near 100 in the field. 100, nice. Down 36 pounds, your back hurts like hell. I don't doubt it. Markman108 over on Instagram. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. Patrick, headed to Illinois to hunt coyotes. Well, good luck to you. Headed to St. Joe for Steelhead Fishing Friday. You guys are so far ahead of me on the rundown. Let me just get right to it, okay? On this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show rundown, the first guest this week is Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charters, senditcharters.com. Jason works out of the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground, linwoodbeachmarina.com. We talk about fishing Saginaw Bay this time of year and a little bit about the river as well. We also talk about an event that they're having at Linwood Marina Saturday, March 2nd. It's a fishing forum. Several captains involved, including Captain Jeff Godey, Captain Bobby Sullivan, who's on with us tonight, Captain Mark Pananzek, and Captain Jason Graham. That is Saturday, March 2nd at Linwood Beach Marina. There is no cost, as far as I understand. Then, Ben Nielsen of Showspan joins me to remind us about the big Outdoor Rama show coming up in a week and a half. In our second hour, Art Lewis, Glenn Duncan of Duncan's Outdoor Shop in Bay City talks about the new gun laws that we're dealing with here in Michigan, effective today, courtesy of our illustrious governor and our politicians. More on that in a minute. Then Justin Tomei of MUCC. And in hour number 3, Patrick, talking to Russ Clark of Seahawk Charters in St. Joe about fishing the St. Joe River for steelhead and fishing Lake Michigan, southern Lake Michigan, for early season coho. And, of course, we wrap it all up again with wild game chef extraordinaire, Dave Miner. Okay, the squirrel hunters with their dogs from Gladwin visited my woods again yesterday. Ross Elliott says, happy birthday to the Bear Whisperer. Randy says, see you then. Bill Lincoln, thank you, Bill. Bill is the guy who suggested that we have a Mike Avery Outdoors golf outing, and we are going to Monday, July 29th at the West Branch Country Club. Uncle Johnny says, happy birthday to you again, Johnny Bowler, Bear Whisperer. Mike Sills, Michigan Outdoorsman, thank you for joining us. David, always a pleasure. Jumping over to Instagram. Runner LOL1. Ray Hogarth, 66, thanks for joining us on this edition of Wednesday Night Live. Bill says, happy birthday, Johnny. Jerry checking in from Algonac. Okay, so what else is on the list? Mark says, tea time tomorrow. Again, Mark, that picture was hilarious. How'd you score that gig? Okay, let's see how much snow we actually get tomorrow. Tim Bins mentioned that you never see one deer right now. I agree, you see a whole bunch of them. Fishing, I've been jonesing to get out. Johnny says, can you believe they want me off the phone? Johnny, go ahead and get off the phone, buddy. Happy birthday to you. Enjoy your family and friends, and we'll talk to you next time, Johnny. Happy birthday. Good night, brother. Have a beer. Gene, good evening. How are you? No, he said he wasn't at Andy's. He said he was somewhere else. I suspected he'd be at Andy's. He said he is at Foggy's. I don't know where Foggy's is. Maybe he means Andy's. Brad, good evening. Two Brads, good evening. Gene says, happy birthday, Johnny. Johnny Bowler's like famous here now. Scott, good evening. How are you? Jumping over to Instagram. Ryan Chafee, thanks for being with us on this edition of Wednesday Night Live. Scott Hand. Scott says, unless something changes drastically with the weather, I think the walleye spawn is going to be much earlier, and the eyes will be back in the bay on the feed early. Skinny water earlier bite this year. That wouldn't bother me at all. Johnny says, thanks, but I'm hanging out as long as I can. Randy, good evening. How are you? Ed says, been seeing a lot of my black striped kitty cats on the road sleeping. Yeah, the skunks, they're just there sleeping. Sure sign of spring. Next thing we need to see is red-winged blackbirds. Joe Bean says, Johnny, the man, the myth, the legend, the bear whisperer. See, Johnny, you're famous, buddy. Speaking of Scott, Saginaw Bay Walleye, I was telling the story on the radio show today, and I'm going to tell it again right now. Mike, has Brad started his new Angler Quest pontoon business? Yes, he has. Is he building boats yet? I don't know. I don't believe so. But the business is moving right along. Jordan, no eating out here. Served my wife venison steak and Lake Michigan salmon for supper. The roses probably didn't hurt either, though. Oh, Jordan. I brought my wife Denise home a dozen roses from the radio studio today. I didn't get them at the studio. I stopped on the way home and bought her a dozen roses. She went out to run some errands this afternoon, and when she came home, she had a handful of very expensive cigars. I mean, much more expensive than I would have bought myself. David said he saw 5 skunks today. Mike, good evening. How are you? I'm doing great. How are you, buddy? Jumping back over to Instagram. The JS26, Fred Wilcox, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. Instagram friends, I cannot see your comments on the feed. I have to go back to Instagram. Hopefully, StreamYard and Instagram will get that figured out. Charles, good evening. Good sir, right back at you. Okay, talking about Saginaw Bay walleye history. I find the Saginaw Bay walleye fishery one of the greatest conservation success stories that I have personally seen in my lifetime. Justin, buddy, nice to have you along with us. Saginaw Bay are native, walleye are native to Saginaw Bay. But back in the, I think it was 40s, overfishing by commercial fishermen and pollution wiped out the walleye population. In the late 70s, early 80s, the DNR teamed up with sportsmen's groups around Saginaw Bay. They created rearing ponds, and those rearing ponds were where they put really tiny walleye fry. Johnny, the wild game dinner, the doors open at 4:30, dinner at 6. I'm going to text Johnny. He just texted me. Doors open at 4:30. Dinner at 6. He's talking about the Trinity Monitor dinner, and I will talk more about that in a minute. Oh, she has COVID. I'm sorry, Randy. Justin, yeah, he had a real nice fish. They got into some real nice fish. Scott, I bought my new boat some new Silver Streak spoons. I bought my boat my boat. Jim, always good to see you. Oh, interesting. No, you can take your snowplow off your tractor, Bernie. A thumbs up on text to Johnny Bowler. I got a bunch of things going on here right now. Okay, let me go back to the Saginaw Bay walleye fishery. They established these rearing ponds, the DNR, in partnership with sportsmen's groups around Saginaw Bay, like the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club, the Iosco County group, I don't remember what they were called, Seaboing, one out in the Thumb, and they would raise these fish and then dump them into Saginaw Bay. They'd raise them from fry into fingerlings. The light's going to drive me crazy. Because the bigger fish had a higher survival rate. So they did this for a few years, and after several years, fishermen still were not catching fish. DNR got a little frustrated because they knew the fish were out there. So what they did was they partnered with the Coast Guard. So a bunch of us media people went to Coast Guard Station Saginaw River, jumped on their cutter there. I don't remember if it's a 41 or a 44-footer. And they took us out into the skinny water. Actually, Tony, where you and I fished today, they took us out there and pulled up alongside a commercial fisherman who had trap nets set up in that water. So we got the cameras rolling. They've got the still cameras clicking pictures. The writers are writing, and they pulled the trap net up out of the bottom in about, I don't know, probably 6 feet of water, and it was full of walleye. So the DNR is like, see, we told you The program is working. The program is successful. There are fish here. Now, Saginaw Bay anglers, figure out how to catch them. And now look where we are. That's why I call the Saginaw Bay Walleye Program one of the greatest conservation success stories I've ever seen. Another one I've seen in my lifetime, eagles. You want to talk about eagles? We can talk about those in a minute. Chris, checking in from Kansas. Red-winged blackbirds are back in Kansas. Hello, Scott. Matt, good evening. Tell James only one can is needed to show the size of the fish. I know what picture you're talking about. Raise the fish, set them free, and nets clean them up. Raise the fish, set them free, and net cleans them up. I'm not getting you, Scott. Water's low, Scott says. I think it's an interesting story, Justin. Mike Smith, Scott, this is the Mike Smith who was out with James. Good evening, Mike. A lot of fun the last couple of days with James. You got to get out with us. I would love to, Mike. I want to go jig the river, though. And I certainly can't hang with you guys when it comes to beer drinking. Turkey's pretty... Thank you, Linda. That's the other one. Turkey population is another great conservation success story. Those are the three that I always go to. Hey, Pat, it was so nice to see you last night. Yes, I am relaxing. This will soon be filled with halfway up with Maker's Mark. So you guys did a great job with the Fordney Club. I was telling folks before you came on here, more than 50 guns? I thought our Trinity dinner did well. And we've only got like 30 or 35 guns. Mike says, we can do the river. We can do the river too. More boats on the river than there are on the bay right now. Jumping over to Instagram. Well, Darby Fiddler, good evening. How are you? Cody, nice to have you along with us. Fred Wilcox. Jumping back to StreamYard, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, also known as X. Okay, what else is on my agenda for this evening? Eagles, and thank you, Linda. Turkeys. Hey, Sharon. Matt Schock. Sitting in class on break for a minute. Matt, glad you could check in with us. Macanudos. No, they're not Macanudos, but every one of them is a Maduro wrapper. Tim, Chris, have you ever had a chance to meet Ben East? No, I did not. Tim says gun laws. Dennis, Ace, good evening. How are you? Chuck, checking in from Johannesburg. All right, let's go back to the gun laws. And Art Lewis wanted to know this too. I have Glenn Duncan from Duncan's Outdoor Shop in Bay City on the show this week. The reason I have Glenn on there is to talk about the new gun laws that our illustrious governor, or S, depending on how you want to say it, and some politicians basically rammed it down our throat as a reaction to some things that happened last year in Michigan. They preyed on fear, and they termed these laws common sense gun laws. How can you possibly be opposed to a common sense gun law? So Glenn Duncan, and Glenn has been intimately involved in this. He is very much involved in the politics of gun control at the national level as well as the state level. Glenn walks me through, and there are three basic things in this. There is the red flag law, which says if somebody is mentally unstable, that police or family can petition the court, and a judge can decide, I don't know, Pat, if that's the right term, but they can petition the court, and the judge can decide if those guns can be temporarily removed from the residence. My question is, if you've got like a divorce situation or whatever, and there's a spouse or an ex-spouse who wants to get even with a person, can they just say, hey, they're mentally unstable, judge, I'm afraid of him, you need to take away his guns? And the ulterior motive is to punish that person? Okay, so that's number one, red flag law. And again, how do you argue with keeping guns out of the hands of somebody who's mentally unstable? The second one is storage. And again, it's to keep our kids safe. How can you possibly argue with anything that would keep guns locked up and out of the hands of kids? You can't. You can't. But as Glenn so eloquently states in the show this week, much more than I can, that there are a lot of logistical problems in that. And in fact, it's even going to be a felony. The third thing is registration and transfer of guns. You now have to do paperwork even if you want to give a gun to your son for a long gun even. This, as Glenn points out, is one step away from mandatory long gun registration. So, they are portrayed and couched as common sense gun laws to protect kids and to protect mentally unstable people from committing violence with a gun. Again, how can you be against it? I will just say that when you go to the polls, you need to be aware of who and what you're voting for. We voted a governor-elect back into office who shut down our state, I'm going to say, unnecessarily during COVID. We forgot all about it. We voted her back into office. When you do such things, there are consequences. Mark says, and judges will take the safe way out and err on the side of caution. Because, Mark, I suspect there's no judge in the world who wants to not be overly safe, keep the guns in somebody's hands who shouldn't have them. They commit an act of violence and the judge gets crucified, right? I'm not even going to touch that one, Jordan. I agree with you, Dave. I agree. But so that's the whole gun thing. Going back to Instagram. Charles C. Felda, the 4817, Gregor, CNJ, CNTU. How are you tonight? And if I could find something to throw at that light right there without breaking it, I would, because all I need to do is knock that thing and it'll quit flashing like that. Good evening, James. How are you? So that's what we're dealing with. And again, Glenn Duncan talks about that very eloquently. Hey, Brent, how are you, buddy? Brent tied up a beautiful custom-made spinning rod for our Trinity Monitor Wild Game dinner. Art Lewis says, once again, the lawful carrying gun owners are forced to follow overburdening gun laws because of a few crazies. I got to go hit that light. I know it. Instagram is after me. Let me get this out of here, put my hearing aid back in, and go hit that light. I'll be right back. Nope. That light needs to be replaced. I can fix it for now just by unplugging it, but I need to replace that light. Flashing light only affects the background. It's fine. It's not fine, Tim, because it bothers me. And if it bothers me, it's not fine. Tim checking in from West Branch. I can just replace it. Tony says, Tony, I think you're being paranoid. I don't know why you think that I was talking about you, Tony. Why would I talk about you on my radio show? Tony says, were you referring to me when you talked on your last week's show about your vertically challenged friends fishing with you? Possibly. It's possible. Scuba Dave over on Instagram. Lemcool74. Dave, is that you, Dave? Mike, Ralph, good evening. How are you? Brent from BAS Custom Fishing Poles. He built a beautiful custom rod for us for, let me respond here. To my son-in-law, Aditya. He built a beautiful rod for us for our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction coming up Saturday, March 2nd. One of many great prizes, auction items, live auction items for that event. If you want to join us, go to one.bidpal.net. That's one.bidpal.net to get your tickets. We still have some left. Chris says, what happens with the coyote issue? It is in the hands of the NRC right now. They are scheduled to vote on it in the March meeting, or at least no earlier than the March meeting. We will see what happens. I didn't want to talk about it on the radio show this week because I'm hesitant to further air our dirty laundry, our hunting community dirty laundry. I talked about it extensively on the radio show last week, but I didn't bring it up on the radio show this week because, again, I just don't want to put hunters in a bad light. Ruben, good afternoon. How are you? How are things in Colorado? Ed says he found 4 Pen 209 reels. Very cool. Those are classics, Ed. Those are classic trolling reels. My dad had several of them. In fact, there are still some on his boat, the Peggy J. Erica, happy Valentine's Day to you. Again, happy Ash Wednesday to all my friends with us tonight. Okay, let's see what else is on the agenda here. Well, look, it is the Trinity Dinner. One.bidpal.net, one.bidpal.net. Sign up to get your tickets or get your tickets online there. Or I have a QR code here on the Facebook page that I will post again. Oh, I want to go back to something Mike Smith said, something about that fish. Mike said something about letting that fish go. That fish was fortunate enough to swim away unscathed, and that was like a 9-pound fish. And Mike, even if you kept that fish, I and nobody should have a problem. There was one comment. I posted a picture of James's fish on there, and somebody said something about letting it go. The fisheries experts, the biologists on Saginaw Bay, want us to thin that population. That's why they went to an 8-fish limit, a 13-inch limit, and they kept the Saginaw River open year-round. They want that fishery thinned out. So if you want to keep some fish out there, have at it. Jordan says the coyote matter has much less to do with coyotes and much more to do with maintaining the integrity of Proposal G. I agree. Good evening, Craig. Tim says, thinking about trying some shore fishing on the Saginaw River by Vets Park. Any suggestions? Any shore anglers here? My first suggestion would be to throw a minnow out there on a dead rod with one rod, dead stick, and throw a body bait with the other one. Am I going to the Ultimate Sports Show in Grand Rapids next month? Probably. I like to go to that show because that's a show that my dad took me to 50 years ago. All right, Chris, have a good evening at work. Going back to Instagram, Bernsey, Douglas Sean, Hyde Kyle, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Bonnie, so was doing the last dinner prep, and how do I find the new gun laws? I don't. You can find them online, but they're not going to be clear and concise. They're going to be very confusing. Good question, Bonnie. Any suggestions? Ed, did I see Lance's post about keeping fish? I did not see Lance's post about keeping fish, but Lance and I have had the conversation many times on the show. Also talking with, I can't think of his name. Okay, John, I'll read your comment. Finished a deer tail, got the bone out, clean, soak in a bunch of dish soap, dry with salt. Still have them from years ago. I think that's very cool. Jason says MCRGO Facebook page has it. The Michigan, what is that? Something gun owners. MCRGO. Has anyone found perch on the bay yet? Haven't heard any reports. Coho starting up in the far South Lake, Michigan. And if you want to learn more about that, James, I would suggest you tune in to this weekend's Outdoor Magazine radio show in hour number 3 as I talk with Russ Clark of Seahawk Charters, fishseahawk.com, fishseahawk.com. We talk more about that. Brent says, split tails with a jig. When is the show in GR? I don't know. Go to showspan.com, showspan.com. Very informative about how it isn't detrimental to populations. Agreed. And Ed, the thing we need to the thing we need to talk about right here is when you're talking about keeping fish, big spawn filled fish, big females, and it not being detrimental to populations. That's only if we're talking about walleye populations like Saginaw Bay, Detroit River, Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair. If you're talking about inland walleye fisheries or resources, keeping those fish can have an impact. Linda, thank you. Michigan Coalition for Responsible Gun Owners. James says he knows Russ very well. Michigan Coalition for Responsible Gun Owners. They have easy-to-read charts for gun purchases and other new laws. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Ed. Michigan Coalition for Responsible Gun Owners. Going back to Instagram. Frick's Bar is with us. Hey, Frick's Bar, how you doing this evening? Kyle says, cancel. I don't want to do that. Any ice up in the Lewiston area? Don't know the answer to that. I don't think there's much ice anywhere. The topics of discussion at the Linwood Beach fishing, what do we call it? It's not a show. Series of seminars. Threefold, talking about rigging, a trolling boat. Number 2, talking about electronics. And this one I'm very interested to learn more about. You know this new forward-facing sonar, the live scan and such, that the bass fishermen are using so effectively, the crappie fishermen are using so effectively. But the one application that hasn't caught hold of now yet is trolling, in a trolling application, a trolling presentation. Jason Graham, who is one of the most technical and specific and detail-oriented fishermen I know, said he is going to work on that this year, and also the Romaneks, Mark and Jake Romanek of Fishing 411. So between those 2 sources, those 3 people, and they are really going to put an emphasis on learning to use forward-facing sonar in trolling situations. I think we're going to learn a lot. So I'm looking forward to that. Ed says, any ice at Trout Lake in the UP? Don't know, Ed. Maybe somebody else can help you out there. Johnny Bowler, the Bear Whisperer, is gone. He's celebrating his birthday with his family. Anybody on here had any experience? Bobby Sullivan, using forward-facing sonar in trolling situations. It'll be interesting. Okay, our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction is Saturday, March 2nd. That is the same day as the Linwood Beach fishing seminar. So go to Linwood Beach in the daytime. Join us for the Trinity Monitor dinner at night. Free fishing weekend is this weekend. Not sure how many options you have with this weather. You know, I used to make a big deal about the free fishing weekend, and I've kind of forgotten about it lately. It's still a good deal, but I don't know. Robert says the sports show is March 7th through the 10th. Brian, good evening. How are you? Have you still got your trail cameras up, Brian? We've got a couple that the batteries haven't gone dead with on yet. I poke my head in out there once in a while to see what's going on. Nothing earth-shattering, that's for sure. I am looking forward to the spring turkey season, that's for sure. Because we occasionally get several longbeards on the cameras out there, Brian. You probably do too. Okay, the Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction, Saturday, March 2nd. one.bidpal.net. We do still have some tickets left, but we are going to sell out. We've sold out every year, and we will sell out this year as well. one.bidpal.net. Some great fishing packages, some great hunting packages, some great trips, Michigan brand products for a year. It's going to be a lot of fun. It is at the Great Hall in Midland. Doors open at 4:30, dinner at 6. Tom says he still has bucks with antlers on them. Should fall soon. Yes, they should be dropping soon, Thomas. Yes, absolutely. Brent, how are things in Port Huron? You can hear the show in Port Huron, WPHM, 1380 AM. Bonnie says she loves her reveal cam in the UP with a solar charger. So, Bonnie, let me ask you, do you ever have to go up there? Or is it just on its own? It sends you the pictures via cell and it recharges with the sun. That's interesting. Brian says 2 out there. Batteries good on lots of deer on one cam, rabbits on the other. Brent says kind of slow in Port Huron right now. Oh, what else? I think I'm probably going to wrap it up a couple of minutes early here tonight just because it's Valentine's Day. And my wife, Denise, said, you know, if you want to go take a drive, you could light up one of those new cigars and we could do that. That actually sounds pretty darn good to me. So let's see. As we get ready to wrap this up, I have a little ritual that I go through. And it involves that music. Left it out in December 1st. Get 2 pictures a day. I will enjoy my Maker's Mark. My favorite cigar is a Fat Bottom Betty at this point. But I like a lot of different cigars. Go puff, my friend. Good night. I might. My name is Mike Avery. This is Wednesday Night Live. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Love to have you check in. Let me know what's on your mind. Let me go over to Instagram, wrap this up. All right, my friends on Instagram, thanks for joining me. I'm going to end the live video there on Instagram. Hopefully we'll see you soon. Go back to StreamYard, get ready to wrap up here. Hey, Uncle Johnny. I will. Why don't you have a Bergen? See you on the Skinny Water. All right, my friends. I'm waiting for this right here. Have a good night, my friends.